Welcome to Monk's Temple. Find a space of comfort now, wherever you are. Let your eyes soften, your shoulders release their silent burden. There's no need to go anywhere or achieve anything in this time we share. Simply arrive here, in the gentle awareness of your own breath, rising and falling. Tonight, let's explore not a set of answers, but a profound and open-ended question, one that the Buddha himself framed not with dogma, but with an illuminating silence. We begin with a story, a personal memory that first opened this door for me. Many winters ago, I found myself in a small, weathered hermitage in the mountains. The air was thin and sharp, and inside, my mind was a chaotic marketplace of doubts. I sat with a monk whose stillness seemed to absorb the very noise of my thoughts. Desperate for a foothold, I asked him the question that had haunted me for years: what is the ultimate truth of this all? Is there a God, a source, a divine mind? He looked at me, not with the intensity of a debater, but with the kindness of someone watching a child struggle with a knot. He reached for a simple bell on the table, a small, bronze singing bowl. He struck it once. A pure, resonant tone filled the space, humming in the air, in our bones. We listened as it faded, slower and slower, into a silence that felt deeper than the sound. He finally spoke, his voice just above a whisper. Your question is like trying to catch the last vibration of the bell and declare it to be the bell. You miss the totality, the strike, the sound, the silence, the listening, the space that holds it all. The truth is not a captured note. It is the entire, uncatchable experience. That was my first lesson in moving beyond the need for an answer, and into the richness of the inquiry itself. If this approach of gentle, experiential inquiry calls to you, I warmly invite you to subscribe to Monk's Temple. Your presence here helps this community of curious hearts to grow, allowing us to keep exploring these depths together. Now, let that story settle. Let's breathe into the space it opened. When we encounter Buddhism, especially from a background steeped in the idea of a creator, we often bring a specific set of tools. The primary tool is the lens of belief. We are trained to examine a spiritual landscape and immediately ask, what does it believe? What does it say about God? So, when we look through this lens at the vast and intricate terrain the Buddha mapped, and we see no central, creator deity, no supreme architect, the easiest conclusion is to label it atheistic. It seems clean, logical. But this is like using a microscope to appreciate a sunset. The instrument is powerful, but it is designed for a different scale of reality. It can analyze wavelengths of light, but it is utterly incapable of letting you feel the awe, the vast, wordless peace of watching the sky blaze and fade. The Buddha's silence on the question of a creator was not a denial. It was a radical reorientation of the entire spiritual endeavor. He was, above all, a physician of the heart. He diagnosed a universal condition, dukkha. Often translated as suffering, but more accurately, the pervasive sense of unease, of things never being quite right, of a subtle friction in the fabric of living. His focus was relentlessly pragmatic, the origin of this illness and its cure. To him, metaphysical debates about first causes were not just unhelpful, they were a dangerous distraction. Imagine a doctor arriving at a house engulfed in flames, with people trapped inside. Someone runs up and demands, "Doctor, first tell me. Who was the architect of this house? What were the philosophical principles of its design?" The doctor would rightly ignore the question. The urgent task is to rescue those inside, to put out the fire. For the Buddha, the fire is the suffering born of craving and ignorance. The rescue is the Noble Eightfold Path. Arguing about who lit the match is a luxury for those who are not yet burning. This is where we find the heart of the Buddhist approach. A shift from abstract belief to direct, verifiable experience. The Buddha did not ask for followers, he invited investigators. His most famous invitation is not, "Believe in me," but, "Come and see." This is an empirical path. It places you, your own consciousness, as the primary field of experimentation. The laboratory is your moment-to-moment experience. The hypothesis is, does clinging cause suffering? Does letting go bring peace? You are the scientist, the subject, and the validator of the results. Let me share an original story to illustrate this shift. In a great city, there existed a legendary museum that housed the single, most perfect mirror in the world. People would pilgrimage to see it. They would stand before it and marvel, discussing the flawless silvering, the genius of the glassmaker, the ornate frame. They wrote treatises on its origin and philosophy. The mirror itself was covered in a velvet cloth, and visitors were only allowed to see their reflection for a brief, supervised moment. One day, a quiet woman entered. She ignored the crowd debating the mirror's nature. When her moment came, she did not look at the mirror. Instead, she gently wiped a smudge of dust from its surface with her sleeve. The guard was horrified. But as she cleaned that one spot, the reflection within it became utterly clear, not of her face, but of the vast sky through a window behind her. In that clarity, she wasn't seeing an object called a mirror, she was seeing through it. The Buddha's teachings are not about admiring the ornate frame of a belief system. They are instructions for cleaning the mirror of your own awareness, so you can see through it to the nature of reality itself. This brings us to the cornerstone teaching of anatta, often translated as not self. This is perhaps the most misunderstood of the Buddha's insights. It is not a bleak announcement that you don't exist. That would be another view to cling to. It is a subtle, liberating realization about the nature of what you call you. We habitually identify with a solid, continuous, independent entity behind our eyes, the thinker of thoughts, the feeler of feelings. The Buddha, through careful mindfulness, pointed out that this sense of a CEO self is an illusion woven from 5 constantly changing aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. You are more like a river than a statue. A river has a name, a recognizable pattern, a force. But is there a permanent, independent river you can point to, separate from the water molecules, the flow, the banks, the rainfall upstream? The river is a process, a happening. To say, "I have no self," is as mistaken as saying, "the river has no self." The truth is subtler: what you are is a dynamic, flowing, interdependent process. There is experiencing, but no permanent, separate experiencer to be found. This is not a concept to believe, but a reality to discover through patient attention to your own stream of experience. Let's settle deeper now. Let this understanding of a flowing self, a river of experience, be a gentle thought in the background. Don't grasp it. Just let it flow. From this place of process, the Buddha described the entire cosmos not as a created artifact, but as a living, breathing ecosystem of consciousness. Buddhist cosmology is a grand, poetic map of this inner-outer landscape. It speaks of realms, realms of intense torment, of titanic struggle, of human complexity, of radiant joy, of sublime formlessness. These are not necessarily physical places in distant space. They are states of being, ecosystems of mind, available within the spectrum of awareness. We visit them every day. A moment of rage is a spark in a hell realm. A grinding anxiety over status is a whisper from the realm of jealous titans. A selfless act of kindness is a touch of a heavenly realm. A deep, silent meditation can brush against the formless. The Buddha is called the teacher of gods and humans, because his wisdom applies to all frequencies of existence. He taught the way out of samsara, the cyclical wandering through these realms, driven by the engine of karma. Karma is the natural law of moral cause and effect. It is not a system of punishment and reward administered by a judge. It is the impersonal, inevitable result of intention and action, like the laws of physics applied to the mind. Your intention is the seed. Your speech and action planted. The result is the fruit that will inevitably grow in the soil of your life and mind. This places immense, sobering responsibility in your hands. You are the gardener of your experience. But it also grants immense freedom. You are not the victim of a cosmic plan. In this very moment, you can choose to plant a different seed. Let me share an original story about this. There was a gardener who inherited a plot of land that was perpetually choked with a prickly, bitter vine. No matter how hard he toiled to clear it, it grew back thicker. He blamed the previous owner, the poor soil, the harsh sun. One day, an old neighbor pointed to the gardener's own compost heap. "You toss the scraps and seeds from your meals in there, don't you?" she asked. The gardener nodded. "And what do you eat?" He confessed he had a taste for a certain bitter fruit. Every day, he ate it and tossed the seeds into the compost. The neighbor smiled gently. "The land feeds on that compost. You are not a victim of the vine. You are its most diligent supplier." The transformation began not with a war on weeds, but with a change in his own daily consumption. He stopped eating the bitter fruit. He started tossing in seeds for flowers. It took time, but slowly, the compost, his accumulated habits, began to nourish blossoms instead of thorns. Our mind is that garden. Every intention, every choice, is a seed we toss into the compost of our future. The path of cultivation, the way out of the cyclical garden, is the noble eightfold path. It's not a staircase to climb in order, but 8 intertwined strands of a single lifeline leading from confusion to clarity. They are grouped into wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. It begins with right view, not a blind belief, but a practical understanding of how things work, that actions have consequences, that clinging causes suffering, that there is a way out. This view informs right intention, the resolve to move toward renunciation, letting go, goodwill, and harmlessness. These are the seeds we consciously choose to plant. Ethical conduct, right speech, right action, right livelihood, is not about following rules to please an authority. It is the essential groundwork for a tranquil mind. You cannot see the still reflection of the moon in a pond if you are constantly throwing rocks into the water. Speech that is false, harsh, or divisive is a rock. Actions that harm others are rocks. A livelihood that causes suffering is a constant disturbance. Ethical living is the practice of calming the waters from the source. It creates the internal peace necessary for deeper seeing. Mental discipline is the training of the heart-mind. Right effort is the energy we apply to prevent unwholesome states from arising, to abandon them if they have arisen, to cultivate wholesome states, and to maintain them. Right mindfulness is the keystone, the clear, non-judgmental awareness of body, feelings, mind, and phenomena in the present moment. Right concentration is the deepening of this mindfulness into unified, stable, tranquil states of meditation. This is not an escape from the world. It is a profound engagement with the raw data of reality, before our stories about it arise. This practice leads us to the heart of insight, the three marks of existence. We have touched on anatta, not self. The other two are anicca, impermanence, and dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness of clinging to the impermanent. We know things change intellectually, but wisdom is the visceral, moment-to-moment embrace of this flow. It is the freedom to love a melody without demanding the note never end. Dukkha is the friction that arises when the reality of constant change rubs against our deep craving for permanence, for security in things that cannot provide it. Even pleasure contains the seed of dukkha because we fear its end. Seeing this not as a pessimistic truth, but as a liberating diagnosis, is the beginning of the end of suffering. Here is another story. A famous musician possessed a violin of such beauty and tone that it was said to hold the soul of music itself. He guarded it fiercely, playing only for kings, terrified of a single scratch. The violin became a prison of anxiety. One night, a humble street musician heard of this and asked to see it. Reluctantly, the master showed him. The street musician, without asking, picked it up and began to play, not a complex concerto, but a simple, folk melody of the road. For a moment, the master was horrified. Then he heard it. The violin sang as never before, not with perfection, but with life. The street musician handed it back, saying, "It is a fine instrument. But it is not the music. The music is in the playing, in the letting go, in the space between the notes. You were worshipping the box that carries the echo." The master, for the first time, understood anicca. The violin would someday crack, the strings break. But the playing, the momentary creation of beauty, was real. He was freed from clinging to the form and could finally join the dance of the music itself. This path of practice is supported by the twin wings of compassion and wisdom. Compassion, karuna, is not pity. It is the trembling of the heart in response to suffering, coupled with the determination to help. It arises naturally when the illusion of separation thins. You see another being not as a separate other, but as another locus of the same wanting, fearing, flowing experience. Loving kindness, metta, is the deliberate cultivation of unconditional friendliness, a radiant wish for well-being that starts with yourself and expands limitlessly. Let's breathe into that sense of expanding friendliness. Let it be a soft warmth in the chest, no need to force it. Simply the intention of goodwill, like a candle flame steady in a still room. This quality of heart is inseparable from the deep, intuitive wisdom that sees the way things are. In Buddhism, the ultimate expression of this wisdom is sunyata, emptiness. This is a word that can sound cold, nihilistic. But it is the most liberating and alive of insights. Emptiness does not mean nothingness. It means empty of independent, permanent existence. Everything, you, me, this thought, that mountain, arises dependently. Nothing stands alone. A tree is empty of treeness outside of the seed, soil, rain, sunlight, and the concept tree. It is a miraculous event, a verb masquerading as a noun. The Heart Sutra, a deep well of Mahayana wisdom, chants the radical equation: form is emptiness, emptiness is form. The world of things and the open space of potential are not two. They are one reality. The phenomenal world is the shimmering expression of emptiness. To realize this is to be freed from the solidity of problems, the heaviness of a fixed self. It all becomes a luminous, weightless dance. Let me offer an original metaphor. Imagine a master weaver who creates stunning tapestries. People become obsessed with the tapestries. They analyze the threads, debate the meanings of the images, buy and sell them, cling to them as prized possessions. They forget the loom. The loom is the empty space, the warp-stretched taut, the silence between the clicks of the shuttle. Without the loom's open structure, no tapestry could appear. The threads would be a tangled pile on the floor. Yet the loom itself is empty of any particular image. It holds the potential for all images. Our world is the tapestry. Emptiness is the loom. Wisdom is remembering the loom, feeling its stable, open presence behind the ever-changing pattern of our lives. It allows us to appreciate the pattern without being imprisoned by it. The historical Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, was a human being who discovered the operating manual for this loom. He is not worshipped as a god. He is revered as the discoverer and teacher of the path to freedom, the Tathagata, the one thus gone, or one who has arrived at suchness. His life story is an archetypal journey. Sheltered prince, encounter with aging, sickness, and death, the futile pursuit of extreme asceticism, the discovery of the middle way, the unwavering commitment under the Bodhi tree, the Great Awakening, and 45 years of tireless teaching. His life proves the potential latent within our human condition. He is the doctor who found the cure and spent his life sharing the prescription. The teachings themselves are considered medicine, tailored to the specific illness of the listener. This is upaya, skillful means. A single, rigid doctrine would be like a hospital with only one kind of pill. The Buddha was a master diagnostician. To someone arrogant, he might teach humility. To someone lacking confidence, he would inspire. His teachings are a toolkit, not a dogma. They are a raft built to cross a river. To cling to the raft after reaching the far shore is to miss the point entirely. The teachings are meant to be used, then let go of. This brings us to a crucial, and often overlooked, aspect, the danger of views. The Buddha warned passionately against clinging to any view, even correct Buddhist ones. In a famous discourse, he systematically deconstructed 62 varieties of metaphysical speculation prevalent in his day. He showed how each, while seeming to offer a complete answer, was actually a trap for the mind. Clinging to a view, ditthyopadana, is a form of craving. It provides a false sense of security, an identity: I am a believer in this. It creates conflict with those who hold other views. The goal is not to replace a wrong view with a right one. The goal is to develop a mind so free and open it doesn't need to cling to any view at all. It can use views as practical tools for navigation and set them down when their work is done. I'll share a personal anecdote here. Early in my study, I became enamored with the concept of emptiness. I read everything I could. I could debate it intellectually. I thought I had the right view. Then, during a period of intense personal loss, all those concepts turned to dust. The intellectual understanding provided zero comfort. The pain was raw and real. In despair, I stopped trying to apply the right view. I just sat with the aching, the confusion, the sheer, messy humanity of it. And in that space of not knowing, of not having an answer, a different kind of peace emerged. It wasn't the peace of a solved puzzle. It was the peace of the sky that contains both storm clouds and clear blue. I hadn't found a better view. I had, for a moment, touched the space that holds all views. The Buddha's silence on the ultimate questions began to make sense not as evasion, but as the deepest kind of answer. Meditation is the primary method for touching this space. It is not about becoming blank or achieving mystical trances. The Pali word is bhavana, which means cultivation or development. It is the disciplined, affectionate practice of coming home to the present moment. We sit, and we become the open sky, learning to observe the clouds of thought, the lightning of emotion, the sunshine of joy, without identifying as the weather. We cultivate mindfulness, sustained attention to the body, feelings, mind states, and the nature of phenomena. Through this, we see directly the impermanent, impersonal nature of all that arises. We see that we are not our anxiety, we are the awareness that knows anxiety. This shift in identity, from content to context, is the key to freedom. Let's settle into that sense of being the awareness, the open sky. Feel the body sitting, breathing. Notice sounds as just sounds, appearing and vanishing in this open space. No need to follow them. From this grounded place of observation, let's explore another profound reorientation that the Buddha offered, his unique approach to knowledge itself. In a world often divided between blind faith and rigid skepticism, he charted a third way, a path of sovereign verification. This is captured powerfully in his advice to the Kalamas, a people confused by the conflicting claims of various spiritual teachers. He did not give them a new set of doctrines to believe. He gave them a method. Don't go by reports, tradition, scripture, logical deduction, or the authority of a teacher. Instead, he said, know for yourselves. When you see that greed, hatred, and delusion lead to harm and suffering, abandon them. When you see that generosity, love, and wisdom lead to welfare and happiness, cultivate them. This is an invitation to a deeply personal, ethical empiricism. The truth is not an abstract proposition to be believed, it is a quality of experience to be discerned through careful attention to cause and effect in your own life. Your lived experience is the ultimate scripture. Let me illustrate with an original story. In a village, there was a well from which everyone drank. One season, many people fell ill. Factions formed. One group claimed the well was cursed by a spirit and needed a complex ritual. Another claimed the water's philosophical essence was impure and required intellectual correction. A third insisted the well was fine and the illness was an illusion. Arguments raged. A quiet child, not invested in any theory, simply walked to the well and looked in. She saw a crack in the interior stone lining, and the rotten roots of an old plant seeping into the water. She didn't argue with the factions. She simply showed them the crack and the roots. The solutions, repairing the lining, clearing the roots, became obvious. The Buddha's method is that child's gaze. It bypasses grand theories and looks directly at the source of the suffering to see its tangible, addressable cause. This empirical approach extends to the very nature of reality. The Buddha encouraged investigation of what he called the Dhamma, the fundamental laws of nature, especially the nature of the mind. This investigative spirit is why you'll find a remarkable resonance between Buddhism and modern science. Both begin with observation. The scientist uses a telescope or microscope, the meditator uses focused attention. Both develop models, theories or teachings, to explain the observations. And crucially, both hold those models lightly, willing to revise them in the face of new evidence. The Buddha's model of the five aggregates, dependent origination, and the Four Noble Truths is not a revealed truth, it is a profound and durable map drawn from intensive, collective introspection over millennia. It is a map that insists, don't take my word for it. Check the territory yourself. This brings us to a beautiful and subtle point, the role of doubt. In many traditions, doubt is the enemy of faith. In the Buddha's path, a certain kind of doubt, honest, investigative doubt, is the necessary fuel for the journey. It is the engine of, come and see. Blind faith is a dead end. But cynical doubt, the kind that dismisses everything without investigation, is also a dead end. The productive doubt the Buddha encouraged is like the curiosity of a researcher. It asks, is this true? How can I know? And then diligently sets up the experiment of practice. This doubt is not opposed to faith, it is the purifier of faith. It transforms faith from belief into confidence, confidence in the path because you have seen its results unfold in your own life. Now, let's explore an original story about this interplay of doubt and direct knowing. A young scholar traveled far to meet a sage renowned for his certainty about the nature of the soul. The scholar, full of intellectual doubt, planned to dissect the sage's arguments. When he arrived, he found the sage sitting by a river, effortlessly skipping stones. Each stone would hop multiple times before sinking. The scholar launched into his prepared philosophical challenges. The sage listened patiently, then handed him a flat, smooth stone. Your questions are deep, the sage said. But first, can you make it skip 7 times? The scholar, annoyed, tried. His stone plunked straight into the water. He tried again and again, failing. His intellectual frustration grew. Finally, exhausted, he just sat and watched the river flow. He noticed the angle of the sage's arm, the flick of the wrist, the choice of stone. He stopped thinking about the theory of skipping stones and just paid attention to the action. When he tried again, with a quiet mind, the stone skipped 3 times. He hadn't answered a single philosophical question, but he had learned something true through his own effort and observation. The sage smiled. Some truths, he said, are not carried in sentences. They are carried in the body, in the doing. Your doubt was a good stone to start with, but you had to throw it yourself to see where it would land. The scholar's journey for intellectual certainty had transformed into a journey of embodied skill. This is the essence of the Buddhist path. A transformation from being a consumer of beliefs to a practitioner of a craft. The craft is the cultivation of the mind and heart. The tools are ethical living, mindfulness, and concentration. The workshop is your daily life. And the final product is not a thing, but a quality of being, freedom, peace, wisdom, compassion. The community, or Sangha, is the fellowship of craftspeople. It's not a group defined by shared belief, but by shared intention and practice. It provides support, inspiration, and gentle correction. Just as a lone woodworker might miss a flaw in their technique, a practitioner alone can easily be blinded by their own habits. The Sangha is the mirror and the encouraging voice. The Buddha declared the Sangha to be one of the three jewels, an essential refuge, precisely because this path, while deeply personal, is not meant to be walked in isolation. Let's rest in the supportive sense of community, of shared intention. Even if you're listening alone, you're part of a timeless fellowship of those who look inward. Now, from this connected space, let's explore one of the most practical and transformative applications of the Buddha's wisdom, its approach to emotion, particularly to difficult, overwhelming emotions like anger, fear, and grief. The Buddhist path does not ask you to suppress these energies or to become a passionless blank slate. Instead, it offers a revolutionary way to relate to them. With mindfulness and compassion, as natural weather patterns in the sky of awareness. The traditional teaching speaks of the three poisons or three unwholesome roots: greed, hatred, and delusion. These are not sins in a judgmental sense. They are seen as fundamental misunderstandings, toxic nutrients that feed the suffering plant. Greed is the energy of clinging, of wanting things to be other than they are, including wanting pleasurable feelings to stay. Hatred is the energy of pushing away, of rejecting what is present, including painful feelings. And delusion is the fog of ignorance that obscures the true nature of reality, making us act as if things and selves are permanent and separate. Our emotional storms are almost always fueled by one or a mixture of these poisons. The antidote is not to fight the storm, but to change our relationship to the weather. The practice is to turn toward the difficult feeling with what is sometimes called curious attention. When anger arises, instead of being swept away by its narrative, "He wronged me. I must act," you pause. You feel the physical signature of the anger, the heat in the face, the clenched jaw, the tight stomach. You name it softly, internally, anger, anger. You create a little space between the raw sensation and the compelled reaction. In that space, you have choice. You are no longer the anger, you are the one aware of the anger. This does not magically dissolve the feeling, it may still be powerful, but it robs it of its power to control you. You can let the energy of anger be felt fully, without letting it dictate your next word or action. You meet it not as an enemy to destroy, but as a distressed child to hold with awareness until it settles. Here's an original story to embody this. There was a master painter renowned for his serene landscapes. In his studio, he kept a small, cracked, and seemingly worthless clay cup on his shelf. An apprentice, curious, finally asked about it. The master explained that early in his career, he was prone to furious bouts of frustration when a painting wasn't going right. He would smash brushes, tear canvases. One day, in such a rage, he grabbed this cup from his desk to hurl it against the wall. But as his arm swung back, he caught a glimpse of the cup in the mirror. He saw its plainness, its crack, his own distorted, furious reflection in its curve. In that mirrored glimpse, he saw the rage from the outside, as an object. His arm froze. He didn't throw the cup. He placed it back on the shelf, carefully. That cup, he said, became his greatest teacher. It wasn't the cup that stopped him. It was the moment of seeing his own emotion as a thing he was holding, separate from his core self. The cracked cup remained on the shelf as a reminder. You can hold the vessel of your anger without smashing it or yourself. You can simply put it down. This mindful relationship extends to all facets of life, and it is deeply supported by the practice of meditation. Formal sitting meditation is the training ground. It's where we practice, in a low-stakes environment, watching the mind's antics, planning, worrying, fantasizing, judging, and gently, patiently, returning to the anchor of the breath. We are building the mental muscle of non-clinging attention. We are learning to rest in the awareness itself, which is like the screen in a movie theater. The movie of our life, with its drama, comedies, and tragedies, plays on, but we stop confusing ourselves for the characters on the screen. We recognize we are the aware space in which the entire movie is appearing. This is not dissociation, it is the ultimate association with what is real and stable amidst the flux. From this stable, aware center, the Buddhist path naturally flowers into an ethical life that feels organic, not imposed. The precepts, guidelines to refrain from harming life, from taking what is not given, from harmful speech, from sexual misconduct, and from intoxication that clouds the mind, are not commandments. They are descriptions of how a clear, compassionate mind naturally behaves. When you see the interconnectedness of all life, harming another feels like harming yourself. When you are present and content, the compulsion to take, lie, or misuse senses diminishes. Ethical living becomes the natural expression of your inner clarity, not a rule you follow to avoid punishment. This leads us to a profound implication. The end of the spiritual path in Buddhism is not a departure to a heavenly realm. It is a full, awakened engagement with this world. The ideal is the bodhisattva of the Mahayana tradition. One who, motivated by vast compassion, delays their own final exit from the cycle of birth and death in order to work for the liberation of all beings. Or the arhat of the Theravada tradition, one who is fully liberated, living out their remaining life with a mind free from defilement, a serene and beneficial presence in the world. Awakening is not an escape from the world, but a freedom within the world. It is the ability to participate fully in life's joys and sorrows with a heart that is unshakably free, compassionate, and at peace. Let me share a final original story for this part. Two monks, one old and one young, were walking along a muddy road after a rainstorm. They came upon a beautifully dressed woman struggling to cross a deep, muddy patch without ruining her silken robes. Without a word, the elder monk picked her up, carried her across, set her down, and continued walking. The younger monk was scandalized. They had strict vows about not touching women. For hours, he fumed in silence, his mind churning with judgment. Finally, he couldn't hold it in. "Brother, how could you carry that woman? We are not supposed to." The elder monk looked at him kindly. "I set her down hours ago by the roadside. You are still carrying her." The story isn't about rule breaking. It's about the weight of our mental judgments versus the lightness of compassionate, present moment action. The young monk was trapped in a view, in the story, in the poison of rigidity. The elder monk was free to respond to need, and free to let the action go. His mind was as clear as the sky after the rain. Let the image of that clear sky after rain rest in your mind. That clarity, that openness, is our true home. Now, let's turn our attention to a concept that is often the first point of contact, and often the first point of confusion, between Buddhism and the modern world: mindfulness. In recent years, this word has been everywhere, in corporate wellness programs, therapy clinics, and lifestyle magazines. But in the context of the Buddha's teachings, mindfulness, or sati, is far more than a stress reduction technique. It is the very heart of the path to liberation. It is the quality of mind that remembers to be present, the guardian at the gate of the senses, the light that illuminates the contents of consciousness without distortion. The Buddha's most detailed instruction on this is found in the Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. He outlines 4 fields for establishing this unwavering attention: the body, feelings, the mind itself, and the phenomena of experience. We start with the body because it is always here, in the present moment. We observe the breath, its natural rhythm, its length, its texture. We scan the body with awareness, noting sensations of pressure, warmth, coolness, tingling, without labeling them as pleasant or unpleasant. This grounds us in the raw, direct reality of experience, pulling us out of the abstract world of thoughts about the past and future. By anchoring in the body, we are no longer adrift in the sea of mental commentary. The second foundation is feelings, or Vedana. This is not emotions, but the basic, immediate tone of every experience. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day, pleasant. The sound of a distant siren, unpleasant. The feeling of the floor under your feet, neutral. Mindfulness sees these fleeting tones arise and pass. The crucial insight here is to see that we habitually cling to pleasant feelings, push away unpleasant ones, and ignore neutral ones. This clinging and pushing is the seed of craving and aversion. Mindfulness creates a space where we can feel a pleasant feeling without the desperate need for it to last, and feel an unpleasant feeling without the panic to make it stop. We begin to relate to the feeling, rather than from the feeling. The third foundation is the mind itself. We observe the mind states as they come and go: a mind with greed, a mind without greed, a mind with anger, a mind without anger, a distracted mind, a concentrated mind, a contracted mind, an expansive mind. We see them as temporary conditions, not as our permanent identity. We learn, oh, this is what a worried mind feels like. Not, I am a worried person. This disidentification is a profound liberation. The fourth foundation is dhammas, often translated as mental objects or phenomena. This includes observing the hindrances to meditation, desire, ill will, sloth, restlessness, doubt, the factors of enlightenment, and the core teachings like the Four Noble Truths. We see how these patterns play out in our own experience. It is applying the microscope of awareness to the very laws of the mind's operation. Mindfulness, in this full sense, is a radical act of rebellion against the autopilot of conditioning. It is the ultimate, coming to our senses. It's not about achieving a special state. It's about fully inhabiting the ordinary state of being alive, right now, with clear comprehension. When you are washing dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warmth of the water, the slipperiness of the soap, the clink of the plates. When you do this, there is no problem. The problem only arises when, while washing dishes, you are mentally arguing with someone, or worrying about a future task, and thus are not truly living your life, but lost in a phantom world of thought. Here is an original story about this. A master chef was known for a single, simple dish, a humble bowl of rice porridge. People would travel for miles to taste it, claiming it held an indescribable secret ingredient, a magic. A rival chef, determined to uncover the secret, disguised himself and took a job in the master's kitchen. For weeks, he watched every step. He analyzed the rice, the water, the pot, the fire. They were all ordinary. Finally, frustrated, he confronted the master. There is no secret ingredient. It's just rice and water. The master nodded. Yes. But when I wash the rice, I just wash the rice. When I pour the water, I just pour the water. When I tend the fire, I just tend the fire. When I stir the pot, I just stir the pot. And when I serve it, I just serve it. The secret ingredient is that there is nothing added, and nothing taken away. It is just the rice, fully itself. The rival chef understood. The magic was the master's undivided, mindful presence in every single, simple action. He wasn't adding a flavor, he was removing the distraction. This quality of presence is what transforms ordinary life into a sacred practice. Walking becomes walking meditation, aware of the lift, move, and place of each foot. Eating becomes eating meditation, savoring each bite with gratitude. Listening becomes deep listening, giving the speaker the gift of your full attention. This is how the path permeates daily life. It is not confined to the cushion. The cushion is the gym. Life is the playing field where the strength and flexibility of mindfulness are truly tested and expressed. From this unshakable presence, we can look at one of the most profound and practical frameworks the Buddha gave us, dependent origination. This is a detailed map of how suffering is constructed, moment to moment. It describes a 12-linked chain, showing how ignorance conditions mental formations, which condition consciousness, which conditions mind and body, all the way down to birth, aging, and death. It sounds abstract, but it is observable. In a moment of anger, you can trace it, there is ignorance of the true nature of the situation, which leads to a mental formation of aversion, which leads to a consciousness dominated by that anger, which leads to bodily tension and harsh speech, name and form, which leads to suffering for yourself and others. The beauty of the map is that it shows the links where the chain can be broken. The most powerful place to break it is with mindfulness, between feeling and craving. When you feel an unpleasant feeling and, instead of automatically moving into craving for it to stop, you simply meet it with mindful awareness, the chain is broken. Suffering ceases to be manufactured in that moment. This is the ultimate applied science of liberation. Let's dwell in that powerful space between feeling and craving, the moment of choice. It's a quiet, potent space. From here, we can explore a dimension of Buddhist wisdom that speaks directly to the creative heart and the seeker of beauty, its view on art, expression, and the nature of the creative act itself. The Buddha's path is not an ascetic denial of beauty. Instead, it offers a way to engage with beauty and creativity that leads to freedom, not entanglement. Consider the traditional concept of the world as samsara, the cycle of birth and death, characterized by impermanence and, ultimately, unsatisfactoriness. It's easy to misinterpret this as a rejection of the world's beauty. But the teaching is more nuanced. It's not that the beautiful sunset is an illusion, it's that our craving for it to be permanent, for it to satisfy us completely, is the source of pain. The problem is the clinging, not the sunset. The Buddhist artist, or the practitioner engaging with art, learns to appreciate the sunset fully, to be utterly present with its fleeting glory, and then to let it go as it fades, without a trace of mourning. The beauty is enjoyed in its purity, untainted by the poison of possessiveness. This leads to a different kind of creativity. When an artist creates from a place of a solidified self, the art can become a project of self-expression, a monument to me. There is often a clinging to the outcome, a need for recognition, a fear of criticism. This process can be filled with dukkha. When an artist creates from a deeper understanding of anatta and emptiness, something shifts. The creative process becomes less about me expressing myself and more about being a clear channel for something to come through. The artist becomes a servant to the art itself. There is a lightness, a playfulness. The Irish poet W.B. Yeats spoke of this as the artist becoming the bundle of accident and incoherence that sits down to breakfast, and is then reborn as an idea, something intended, complete. This is not far from the Buddhist sense of the creative mind being an empty, luminous clarity from which forms spontaneously arise. Let me share an original story about this. In a valley, there were two famous potters. The first, Arvan, was a technical genius. His pots were flawless, symmetrical, glazed with dazzling, complex colors. He signed each one prominently. He was consumed by his reputation, terrified of making an imperfect piece. The second potter, Liana, worked in a small, sunlit shed. Her pots were simple, often slightly irregular. She used local clay and natural ash glazes. She rarely signed her work. People said her pots felt alive. A critic once asked Liana her secret. She gestured to a lump of clay on her wheel. "I don't make the pot," she said. "I collaborate with the clay. My job is to get my ideas about what a Liana pot should be out of the way. I center the clay, open it, lift the walls, but I follow what the clay wants to do. Sometimes it wants to be tall, sometimes wide. The fire adds its own voice with the ash marks. The potter, the clay, the wheel, the fire, the ash, we all make the pot together. There is no single creator to take credit. Arvan created from a place of self. Liana created from a place of not self, of interconnected process. Her work carried the peace of that understanding. This principle applies to how we consume art and beauty as well. We can look at a masterpiece in a museum with a grasping mind. I want this experience to be profound. I want to understand it. I want to own its beauty. This creates a subtle tension between us and the art. Or, we can approach it with mindfulness. We simply stand before it, present with the colors, shapes, and feelings that arise in us. We let it be what it is, and we let ourselves be what we are in response. There is no division, no grasping. In that open space, true appreciation flowers. This is the essence of aesthetic experience freed from craving. The Buddha himself used artistic metaphors. The raft for crossing the river is a crafted object, a useful tool. The parable of the lute. Where a musician must tune the strings neither too tight nor too loose for perfect sound, is an artistic analogy for the middle way. His teachings are filled with vivid imagery, similes, and stories. He was a master communicator who used the art of language skillfully to point to what is beyond language. The vast canon of Buddhist literature, from the Pali Suttas to the Zen koans to the Tibetan poetry, is itself a monumental work of art, designed not merely to inform but to transform, to awaken. Furthermore, in many Buddhist cultures, art became a central form of practice. Creating sand mandalas, with their breathtaking intricacy, only to be ritually swept away, is a direct enactment of impermanence and non-attachment. The brushstroke of Zen calligraphy demands absolute, undivided presence. A moment of distraction is forever captured in the wavering line. These are not mere hobbies. They are forms of meditation in action, training the mind in concentration, patience, and the graceful acceptance of transience. This brings us to a beautiful convergence. The path of awakening and the creative life both demand courage. They demand the courage to face the blank page, the empty canvas, the silent meditation cushion. They demand the courage to begin without knowing the outcome, to persist through periods of dullness and failure, and to finally let go of the finished product, offering it to the world without being defined by its reception. The artist and the meditator both learn to work with the raw materials of their own being, their perceptions, their emotions, their memories, and to shape them, not into a monument to the ego, but into an offering of truth or beauty that points beyond the self. Here is a final original tale for this part. A renowned sculptor was hired to create a statue of a deity for a village temple. He labored for a year, producing a figure of such majestic perfection that the villagers were in awe. At the unveiling, they praised him endlessly. But the sculptor seemed uneasy. That night, he returned to the temple with his tools. Under the moonlight, he took his chisel and deliberately made a single, small, off-center chip on the deity's shoulder. His apprentice, who had followed him, gasped. "Master! You've ruined perfection." The sculptor stepped back, and a look of deep peace settled on his face. "No," he whispered. "Now it is complete. Before, it was a testament to my skill. It was a prison of perfection. Now, with this one flaw, it is no longer mine. The moon can enter through the crack. Now, it belongs to the gods, to the villagers, to the rain that will weather it. Now, it is alive." He had released his creation from the tyranny of his own ego. In that intentional imperfection, he embodied sunyata and true letting go. Let that image of the moon entering through the crack rest in your mind. That openness, that allowing, is a profound kind of strength. From this place, let's turn our attention to a realm where Buddhism often finds deep resonance and sparks lively dialogue, the world of modern psychology and neuroscience. Here, the Buddha's ancient map of the mind meets the cutting-edge charts of science, and they often point to strikingly similar terrain. This isn't about proving Buddhism scientifically correct, but about recognizing a shared commitment to understanding the nature of suffering and the potential for human transformation through first-person investigation. The Buddha was, in essence, a master phenomenologist. He dedicated himself to a systematic, introspective exploration of subjective experience. 2,500 years ago, he detailed mental processes that modern cognitive and affective neuroscience are now identifying with brain imaging and neural models. For instance, the concept of the default mode network, the brain's background chatter system that activates when we're not focused on a task, often involved in self-referential thinking, mind-wandering, and rumination, bears a fascinating resemblance to what the Buddha described as the proliferating, story-making, monkey mind. This is the mind constantly lost in past and future, constructing and reinforcing the sense of a solid, narrative self. The practice of mindfulness meditation has been shown to quiet this default mode network. It literally changes the brain's habitual pathways, strengthening regions associated with present moment awareness, emotional regulation, and body sensation. Furthermore, The Buddha's analysis of suffering aligns powerfully with psychological models of how we create our own distress. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is built on the idea that it is not events themselves, but our thoughts about events, that cause emotional suffering. The Buddha's teaching on the second arrow makes this vivid. He said, when you are struck by an arrow, a painful event, that is the first arrow. The second arrow is your reaction to it. Your anger, fear, shame, your story about why this shouldn't have happened, your projection of a terrible future. The second arrow is self-inflicted. Mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, and mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, are direct applications of Buddhist mindfulness to prevent the firing of that second arrow. They teach people to observe painful thoughts and feelings as mental events, not as absolute truths about the self or the world, thereby breaking the cycle of depression and anxiety. The teaching of anatta, not self, also finds echoes in neuroscience. When scientists look for the seat of consciousness, the CEO of the brain, they find no one in the cockpit. They find a decentralized, constantly shifting network of processes. There is no singular, unified self to be found in the neural architecture. What we experience as a continuous I is a constructed narrative, a useful illusion created by the brain to provide coherence. The Buddha's insight was precisely this: the sense of self is a process, not an entity. Seeing this experientially through meditation can alleviate the immense burden of defending and maintaining that fictional solid self. Let me offer an original story that bridges these worlds. A neuroscientist, Dr. Eris, was a staunch materialist who believed consciousness was merely an epiphenomenon of the brain, a ghost with no real agency. He spent his days mapping neural circuits. He also suffered from chronic, debilitating migraines. Traditional medicine offered little relief. Skeptical but desperate, he attended a mindfulness for chronic pain program. He learned to observe the pain sensations with detached curiosity, to separate the raw sensory data, the first arrow of the headache, from the catastrophic story: this is unbearable, my life is ruined, I'll never work again, the second arrows. To his astonishment, the practice worked. The pain didn't vanish, but his suffering from it decreased dramatically. One day in his lab, looking at a real-time fMRI scan of his own brain during a migraine while he practiced mindfulness, he saw something remarkable. The pain centers lit up, but the emotional and narrative centers remained relatively quiet. He was witnessing his own brain not firing the second arrow. In that moment, his purely materialist view cracked. He realized that the act of mindful attention wasn't just a passive byproduct of brain activity. It was a causal force that could shape that activity. He had not found a soul, but he had empirically verified the power of the Buddha's central prescription, that how you attend to experience changes the experience itself. He began to see consciousness not just as a ghost in the machine, but as the gardener that could prune the machine's own chaotic growth. This dialogue extends to our understanding of ethics and interconnectedness. Systems theory and ecology show us the profound interdependence of all life on Earth, how the health of a forest depends on fungi, insects, trees, and weather in a seamless web. This is a scientific validation of pratyaya samutpada, dependent origination. The climate crisis is perhaps the ultimate lesson in interconnected suffering born from ignorance and greed. The Buddhist call for compassion and non-harming is not just a spiritual ideal. It is an evolutionary and ecological imperative for survival. When we see the world through the lens of dependent origination, environmentalism becomes an obvious, non-negotiable extension of ethical practice. Finally, the shared spirit of open inquiry is paramount. Both the scientific method and the Buddha's come and see approach are rooted in doubt, experimentation, and empirical verification. The Buddha told the Kalamas to trust their own experience over authority. Good science insists on reproducible evidence over dogma. Both are self-correcting. A scientific theory is held lightly, ready to be revised or discarded in the face of new data. The Buddha's teachings are a raft to be let go of after crossing the river. This humility before the vast unknown, this willingness to question, is a powerful antidote to the fundamentalism and rigid ideology that plague our world. The meeting of Buddhism and science doesn't make Buddhism a science, nor does it make science a religion. It creates a fertile middle ground where the first-person, subjective wisdom of contemplative practice can inform our understanding of the mind, and where the third-person, objective rigor of science can help refine and demystify the practices. It tells us that the path to well-being is not a matter of ancient superstition, but a trainable skill of the human mind and heart, relevant now more than ever. Let's arrive here, together, in this final shared moment of exploration. Let the breath be natural. Let the body be at ease. We've traveled through landscapes of mind, heart, and cosmos, all through the gentle, guiding light of the Buddha's wisdom. We've seen how this path transcends the simple labels of theist or atheist, how it is a call not to belief, but to a profound and personal awakening. Now, let's gather these threads into a practical, heartfelt invitation for your own life, here and now. The essence of it all is not complex. It is about ending suffering by seeing clearly. It begins with a simple, courageous act, the willingness to pause. In the space between stimulus and response, in that quiet gap you cultivate through mindfulness, your freedom is born. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are the aware, open space in which they all happen. This is not a metaphysical proposition, it is an experience you can verify in this very instant. When a sound arises, notice the space of listening that contains it. When a thought forms, notice the awareness that knows the thought. This aware space is your true home. It is undisturbed, clear, and fundamentally at peace. From this home, you engage with the world. The Noble Eightfold Path becomes your natural way of being. Your view aligns with reality, you see the law of cause and effect, you understand suffering and its end. Your intentions naturally lean toward letting go, kindness, and harmlessness. Your speech becomes truthful and helpful, your actions peaceful and honest, your livelihood a service rather than a harm. You apply steady effort to nurture the good within you. Your mindfulness becomes unshakable, a constant, gentle presence. Your concentration deepens, unifying your heart and mind. This is not a strict regimen, but the organic flowering of a heart that has come home to itself. Compassion becomes your native language. You see the universal struggle in every face, the same desire for happiness, the same fear of pain. The separation between self and other softens. You realize that helping another is not a sacrifice, but the most logical thing to do, like one hand instinctively tending a wound on the other. This compassion is wise, it doesn't mean you allow harm or burn yourself out. It means you act from a place of interconnectedness, with skill and balance. This path does not require you to abandon your life, your loves, or your responsibilities. It asks you to inhabit them fully, with wakefulness. The laundry, the commute, the difficult conversation, the moment of joy, these are not obstacles to your spiritual life. They are your spiritual life. They are the very ground where you practice patience, where you apply mindfulness, where you express compassion. Nirvana is not a distant heaven. It is the peace you find within the waves of samsara. It is the freedom of the water to be perfectly itself while flowing in the river. So, what is the next step? It is always the same step. Come back. Come back to this breath. Come back to this sensation in your body. Come back to the sounds around you. When you find yourself lost in a story of past regret or future anxiety, gently return. This returning is the entire practice. It is a muscle you strengthen, a path you wear deep with the footsteps of your own attention. Remember, you are not alone on this path. The Sangha, the community of all those who seek truth with an open heart, spans time and space. By listening to this, you have sat in this virtual temple. Carry this sense of fellowship with you. And let this wisdom be a gentle guide, not a new set of chains. The Buddha's final words were a reminder: all conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. Strive not with grim effort, but with the diligent, caring attention of a gardener tending a precious plot. Tend to your mind. Tend to your heart. The fruits of peace and understanding will grow naturally. Thank you for spending this time at Monk's Temple. If this journey has brought you a moment of peace, a spark of clarity, or simply a feeling of calm companionship, I warmly invite you to subscribe. Your presence helps this community of mindful exploration to grow and continue. May the wisdom of seeing clearly and the warmth of compassion grow in your heart. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free. Good night.